Hello, everybody, and welcome. I can actually redo this. How, how do I want to say? Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Educatedcollins Snap channel. How you doing? No intro today. I'm already late, 2 hours late when this video gets posted. How dare I? But Secondary released an update here. This is also good because we also get some data mine, so that's going to be fun to dive in for the next couple days. But we have just a short little update or patch changes, right? Just 3 cards being changed, which is relatively low. Usually they add like 4 to 5. We've seen as much as like 8 cards changing in a single patch. So this is generally low impact, but I do think some of the cards changing matters. At least one of the cards changing matters. So that's going to be fun to see how that changes the matters. But we do have some visual effects. Some of the cards are getting visual effects and sound effects. But when it comes to balancing updates, we have 3 changes. First one being Omega Red. So this is a card that I have always wanted to be good. Generally, it's a fun card. It looks cool. It has interesting decision trees. The only issue is like it's too hard to activate. A 4/5 stat line is just not very good in my opinion. And when you try to activate it, it's such a hard thing to do to get 10 power ahead here. So it basically in most games ends up being a 4/5. So just not a very great card in essence. They've changed it now. It's still a 4/5, but now you just have to be winning here instead of being ahead by 10. And instead of getting plus 4 power, you're getting plus 3 power. I would say this is a buff. Like theoretically, it's a nerf. Like let's be clear. If you somehow were able to consistently be ahead by 10 power in every game you play, this is a straight nerf. You're losing 1 power across the board. Like, so 2 power overall. How dare they? But that's not really that easy to do. And in most games, you're not going to be ahead by 10 power. So now this gives you a place to fight. And it also just kind of, I think, works better. It ends up being a 4/11 if you can get it to go off, which obviously you're going to look at Miss Marvel. Like, that's what everyone's going to compare it to and say, hey, this is no Miss Marvel. But it has arguably easier requirements now than Miss Marvel. But it's definitely more playable. So that's cool. I don't know if this is going to make Omega Red decks pop again, like, or if they never pop, but make Omega Red playable, or people are going to be experimenting with Omega Red more. I do think people will, but I don't know if this is enough to bring like a Spectrum deck or an Onslaught deck into the forefront. They have their own issues, especially with these type of decks. You are very telegraphed. Once you play Omega Red, you kind of know where your opponent is going to be playing in the follow-up turns, and that kind of makes it a little bit, I guess, less powerful. So I do think this is better. I don't know if it's enough to make it like a top-tier card or a card that sees a lot of play, but it's definitely in the right direction. I hope they continue doing things like this, and it's a card I've wanted to be good, so nice to see. The incentives are the same. Pile your power onto Omega Red's location, just a stronger and more elegant execution. Yeah, I think it's fine. We'll see if new meta decks get created with Omega Red in it. It's a fun card. Kind of like what I'm thinking is like maybe use it for last turn. Because if you are playing like Zobber or something, last turn this could be a pretty powerful combo if you go like Omega Red, Darkhawk, things like that. Especially when in a lot of cases, you know where your opponent is not going to play, right? Like, that is usually clear on the last turn. There's usually, like, 1 or 2. Like, one player has one lane they're dominating in, another player has another lane they're dominating in. You're not, a lot of times, going to contest the lane you're dominating in, so you generally can play it in that particular lane and get the buff going. So, that could be nice. The issue of having cards that play every lane is a lot of games you don't really contest every single lane, so a lot of the power gets wasted. But it's still nice to see changes for this card, and then hopefully it's enough to make it see at least some play. I don't think it's enough to make it see like top tier play, but it's still heading in the right direction. So nice to see. Next up, we have Beast. This is by far the most important change, I think. I would say this is a buff. I just think cost reduction is so strong. And yeah, you're losing 2 power. And you're also, the functionality of Beast is changing. Yeah, we should talk about it. So it's going from on reveal, return your other costs here to your hand and give them -1 cost. Now it's return your other cards here to your hand. It's the same ability, but they cost 1 less next turn. So you can't hold them in your hand. That's the new change. It still bounces, it still does the same things, but you can't hold it in your hand. But I will say, like, I don't think a lot of players were doing that anyways, so I feel like this just ends up in a lot of games being the same but cheaper. So Beast has been a design constraint as it strengthens 1 cost cards in 2 different ways and plays powerful other effects like Falcon. Previously, we addressed that by moving Beast from 2 to 3/4, which was effective for a time. However, today we're trading that change back for a more efficient Beast with a time-sensitive discount that better suits the card's cost. We still want Beast to be a strong card, and we're optimistic this is mostly a sideways change for him. Moving forward, we expect to look at temporary cost reduction a little more to create similar exciting gameplay than cheats energies without pushing as much of the strength into repeated use of a turn 6 flood of cards. So I think this change, along with the Black Swan being added, is really going to push these flood decks back into the meta. Not that Beast was bad, but Beast was sometimes awkward. What's nice now is you have a lot of clean turn 5 plays, especially with Black Swan. You can go Black Swan Beast, Black Swan Falcon. You can Beast earlier now if you are just going to play 1-drop into a bounce, like maybe no one plays Hawkeye, but that's the one that always jumps into my head. Like, you play Hawkeye, and then you Beast the Hawkeye, and then you play the Hawkeye again, and then you Falcon the Hawkeye, and then bam, it's like a gigantic Hawkeye. Like, wow, that's what my head does, but it's not like that reliable, so you don't really see that. But I do think this is going to help Beast overall. I think it just gives you more time to play this. And I mean, old Beast was really good. Like, this just makes it old Beast in a lot of cases. So it just feels like a buff to me. When it went from 2 to 3/4, I thought it was a nerf. So when it's going back down to 2/2, like, I would say it's a buff. So this looks fun. This is definitely going to shake up the meta in my opinion. So Sandman's back, baby, said no one. I mean, Sandman is a card that I want to be playable, but it's so low power, and a lot of decks can just play a 5 and a 6, so it doesn't work in a lot of matches. But let's say Beast gets super popular, Flood deck gets super popular, maybe you try out Electro Ramp again, see if that could work. But yeah, definitely the biggest change this patch. We'll see how much of an impact it has. And then finally, we have Helicarrier. This one definitely looks like a meme change. So it's going from when you discard this, you add 3 random cards, to when you discard this, you fill your hand with random cards. Now, this could be okay. Right now, Helicarrier is not seeing any play at all. So this will help it maybe have a chance to see play, though you're probably going to see it in meme decks. I will say that discarding, if you have multiple discards, like you're playing Corvus Glaive or Hellcow or Modok, right? As long as you discard Helicarrier first, you'll discard something else afterwards. So it's not like you're going to lose a draw. One of the main issues here with this change is if you play a single discard, you lose the draw because you don't get, like, your hand is going to be full. So with multiple discards, there's a good chance you don't lose a draw. So that's kind of nice. And honestly, it's probably okay if you are running a heavy discard deck, because you're probably gonna have a low hand. So in those decks, like let's say if you can set it up where you go, I don't know, Corvus Glaive into discard Helicarrier, you fill your hand, sure. But next turn you have Modok, like your Morbius, your Meek, those cards are gonna be super happy with you. So there is a world where this sees some play. And also another thing about this is it gives your Corvus a use case for your energy. A lot of times you play Corvus, you don't have a use for this energy. Random cards definitely a time to use this energy. So maybe it sees play because it's seeing no play right now. So at least this has like it's a change, and maybe a change will be better for Helicarrier. So Helicarrier hasn't really found an identity in the game, and the effect is awkward to navigate for decks based on discard or Devil Dinosaur. Yeah. We're taking the limiters off here to see if an uncapped Helicarrier improves the rewards enough to make this a quest worth going for some decks. Yeah, at minimum, it should be more exciting to discard now. I do wonder, some people want to just draw. What if it was like fill your hand or draw up to like fill your hand up to 6 cards, right? So you could still draw. I'm sure people would like that a little bit better. I do wonder. So it could be a nerf in some cases, right? If you already have a full hand, you lose more draws, but in essence that might not even be a nerf, right? Like if it always fills your hand up to 6 cards, that's an interesting adjustment. I would love to see them try something like that. If this isn't like very good or still has no identity, but this I wouldn't necessarily say this is going to impact the meta at all. Corvus isn't even in the meta right now, which is really, in my opinion, like the only deck I can think where I'm like, oh yeah, maybe I could use the extra mana to play some of these random cards. Like so, maybe when that comes out, you might try a Helicarrier with that, but for now, this is not really impactful. Same thing with Omega Red. I think Omega Red might be impactful, but it's unlikely to be top tier, so you're not really going to see a ton of Omega Red decks or anything because of this. I mean, you're always going to compare it to Miss Marvel, things like that, and Miss Marvel, I still think is better. And then Beast, I do think is a pretty impactful one. So those are some changes. Like they're not small changes, right? But it's really only the Beast one that really will impact the meta, in my opinion. So we'll have to see. And then we have bug fixes and stuff like that. Nothing too crazy. There's a lot of bugs. There are always a lot of bugs. Like you never, unless you're the one like designing the game, you don't notice all of this. Like look at all of these bugs. But yeah, hopefully they get those fixed in due time. It does remind me of some of the other, like the roadmap and stuff like that they've talked about. We'll see if they add some of the stuff coming up. But yeah, definitely interested to see some of the data mines that have been released. But yeah, this is the patch, small one here, but hopefully that's because they're working on something big, chat. No Kofi. All right, take care of yourself and have one for us today.
Educatedcollins snap. Once you watch him, you won't go back. He'll teach you to marvel snap. Your skills will be